At the beginning, we are shown a scene from the 15th century. Fishermen are working on the seashore when suddenly a massive storm occurs and destroys everything there. The next day, when the fishermen go to the seashore, they find many fish that had washed ashore due to the storm. Then, one man sees a girl trapped in a cave. He calls the other villagers there. When they go near the girl, everyone is shocked because she is a mermaid. Then, the villagers take the mermaid to the village chief to show her to him. The chief tries to touch her, but others stop him and warn, "If you touch the mermaid, she will erase your memory." The chief says, "I don't care about any of this. I will touch the mermaid with my sword." The mermaid is then shown to the king, kept captive in one place. When the king sees her, he is mesmerized because the mermaid is truly beautiful. Then the village chief tells the king, "This is a real mermaid, and we will extract her tail." However, the king disagrees with him and says, "You are not a good person. If you do this, I will sentence you to life imprisonment." On the king's orders, the mermaid is released and sent back to the sea. The mermaid also says, "Thank you." In the next scene, we are shown a 21st century setting where a handsome man. He is the male lead, Junjae. He is a con artist, changing his appearance to deceive and rob people. Junjae has two friends who assist him in his schemes. The three of them are planning to rob a big company. Junjae, along with one of his friends, disguises himself as a lawyer, while the third friend works on hacking the security system. They succeed in their plan and, in return, earn a lot of money and even sponsorship for a foreign trip. After completing their work, the three friends separate and go on their trips. In the next scene, Junjae is on a plane, heading to an island. Meanwhile, in the same sea, the mermaid is shown. She finds a beautiful green bracelet underwater and wears it on her wrist. In the next scene, Junjae arrives at the place and is sitting on the seashore. That night, as the mermaid is swimming, a storm arises. The next morning, when the mermaid regains consciousness, she is on the seashore. As soon as she touches the ground, she feels a shock because her tail has turned into legs, and she is now able to walk. She then returns to the water and starts swimming again. Meanwhile, Junji arrives there, and upon seeing him, the mermaid hides. In the next scene, Junji is sleeping when he suddenly hears the sound of something falling. Startled, he wakes up immediately. He finds his room in complete disarray, with food scattered everywhere. He assumes a thief has entered his room. While he is picking up his scattered clothes, he notices someone's feet. It turns out to be the mermaid, who kicks Junjae in self-defense. Junjae sees that the girl is holding something in her hands. He goes closer to her to see it again, but the mermaid kicks him again, and he falls far away. After this, Junjae starts laughing. Then, the mermaid looks at the sea from the room. She tries to go there, but she doesn't realize there is a mirror and bumps into it, falling unconscious right there. Junjae then ties her up and calls the police. When the mermaid regains consciousness, Junjae looks at her hands to see what she was hiding, and he finds a cherry in her hands, which the mermaid eats. Seeing this, he takes several pictures of her. In the next scene, when the police are taking the mermaid away, Junji notices a wound mark on her foot and feels pity for her. He tells the police she hasn't stolen anything, but the police still take her away. Meanwhile, Junjae sends the mermaid's pictures to his friends and asks them to research her. He also notices the green bracelet on the mermaid's wrist. At the police station, the mermaid behaves very oddly. The human world seems very strange to her. The police question her, but she doesn't answer anything and plays with tissues like a child. Then she attacks the police and snatches their gun, but eventually, the police manage to lock her up. In the next scene, Junjae goes on a date with an air hostess to con her, but during the date, he gets a message from his friend. The message reveals that the bracelet the mermaid is wearing is ancient and very valuable, worth millions. After reading the message, Junjae goes to the police station. There, he hypnotizes the police and tells them, "The girl is my wife, and we are married." The police release her. Outside, Junjae apologizes to the mermaid and asks her, "Give me the bracelet," but the mermaid doesn't let him touch it. Then Junjae takes her to a mall to buy her a gift. At the mall, the mermaid gets scared seeing the escalator, so Junjae carries her. Then, he notices the wound on her foot and takes her to a shoe shop. There, the mermaid picks up the shoes and wears them on her hands. Then he takes her to buy clothes. There too, she places the clothes on her head. Later, when she comes back wearing the clothes properly, Junjae is not there, and she leaves the place. When Junjae returns, he realizes the girl is missing. He starts searching for her, and finally finds the mermaid eating candy. The mermaid smiles when she sees him, and Junjae says, "So you can smile too." Then he takes her to eat. Even there, the mermaid embarrasses Junjae. She eats noodles like an animal. Junjae then teaches her, "This is how you eat noodles properly." Afterward, he gets close to her and puts a necklace on her, cunningly taking the green bracelet. Once Junjae has the bracelet and his work is done, he takes her to the mall again and makes her sit in one spot. He tells her, "Stay here. I'll come back after finishing some work." Then Junjae leaves. The mermaid waits for a long time at that spot. However, as the mall is about to close, she is forced to leave. It is raining outside, and the mermaid sits alone in the rain. After some time, Junjae comes back and extends his hand to her, just like in the past when the king had freed the mermaid. Then we are shown a past scene where the king is flying lanterns with children. One lantern gets stuck near the sea. When the king goes there, he sees the same mermaid. He says to her, "Don't be afraid of me." The mermaid responds, "You seem more scared than I am." The king then says, "So you can speak, but why didn't you say anything that day?" The mermaid replies, "There's nothing a mermaid can't do. Maybe you just didn't hear me that day. Long ago, a human fell in love with a mermaid and he could hear her voice." When the king tries to ask her more about it, some people arrive and the mermaid says, "Whenever this lantern shines, we will surely meet again," and leaves. Meanwhile, the village chief is talking to someone saying, "The bond between a mermaid and a human is unique. Fate always brings them together. If I keep an eye on the king, one day I'll catch the mermaid." In the present, Junjae goes to the mermaid and takes her with him. While traveling in the car, the mermaid continues doing strange things. Junjae asks her, "What's your home address? Do you have friends?" But she doesn't respond. Junjae wonders what mess he has gotten himself into. He takes the mermaid to a hotel. While Junjae is taking a shower, the mermaid keeps turning the lights on and off. Frustrated, Junjae comes out and explains things to her, but the mermaid just smiles at him. Junjae says, "Don't get the wrong idea. I have no interest in you. I brought you here because you were alone." In the next scene, we see a girl trying to call Junjae, but he doesn't answer. This girl's name is Cha-shi. Her sister-in-law tells her, "You're calling that guy again, aren't you? The one who used to study with you and always ignored you." Cha-shi ignores her sister-in-law's comments and leaves. A maid nearby says to the sister-in-law, "My son also used to study there," but the sister-in-law doesn't believe her and walks away. Elsewhere, the businesswoman Junjae and his friends had conned is furious and wants to catch the thieves. At the hotel, Junjae is working on his laptop when the mermaid suddenly comes over and takes it from him. She spends the entire night looking at the laptop. When Junjae wakes up in the morning, he finds the mermaid in the same position, still staring at the laptop. Junjae gets a call from his friend who warns him, "The goons of the businesswoman have reached the hotel to catch you." At that moment, the goons enter the hotel. Junjae takes the mermaid and escapes through the back route. The goons chase them, but the mermaid uses her powers to defeat them. Later, the two ride a bicycle. The mermaid feels special and extremely happy while sitting on the bicycle. Soon more goons appear, and the two fight them off together before escaping again on the bicycle. As they continue their journey, the mermaid notices an ice cream shop. She grabs some ice cream but doesn't have any money to pay for it. Junjae ends up paying for the ice cream. Then Junjae takes the mermaid to meet his friends at a church. There, he tells everyone, "This is my wife. She had an accident a few years ago, which caused her to lose her memory and ability to speak. I've been longing to hear her voice ever since." As soon as Junjae finishes speaking, the mermaid begins to talk, saying, "How are you all?" Hearing this, Junjae and the others are shocked. Junjae takes her outside and asks, "You can talk?" The mermaid replies, "Yes, I can." The mermaid then asks Junjae, "What does wife mean?" Junjae explains that it means friend. The mermaid says, "I learned how to speak from your laptop." Junjae laughs at this. As Junjae and the mermaid are heading back to the hotel, the mermaid says, "I'm thirsty." Junjae hands her water and notices that she is drinking directly from the can. Junjae jokingly tells a passerby, "It seems my wife was very thirsty." Later in their room, the mermaid asks Junjae, "What is love?" Junjae replies, "Love is a dangerous thing. When someone loves another, they lose all their value because they completely belong to the other person." The mermaid says, "I've fallen in love with you." Junjae, shocked, tells her to stop talking. Next, Junjae takes the mermaid out to eat. There, he hypnotizes her to ask about her parents. The mermaid replies, "Who are parents?" Junjae explains, "They are the ones who gave birth to us." The mermaid says, "I have no one. I'm alone." Junjae then asks for her name, and the mermaid says, "I don't have a name." Junjae responds, "I'm not surprised since you're completely crazy." The mermaid then asks, "If I had a name and parents, would you have kept me with you?" She adds, "You're a very kind person. You could have left me alone, but you didn't." Her words make Junjae reflect deeply. That night, while the mermaid is sleeping, Junjae places her bracelet back on her wrist. The next morning, the two set out for Seoul, where Junjae's house is. However, the goons follow them there too. While running, Junjae and the mermaid reach a cliff with the ocean below, and the goons standing in front with guns. Junjae gives up and tells the mermaid, "Leave," but she replies, "I'm your wife. I won't leave." The mermaid then tells Junjae, "Jump into the ocean with me." Junjae says, "I'd rather take a bullet than jump into the ocean," but the mermaid grabs his hand and jumps into the water with him. Once in the ocean, the mermaid's tail appears, shocking Junjae. He finally realizes she is a mermaid. The two then kiss underwater. Next, we are shown a past scene where the king visits the mermaid and asks, "What is your name?" The mermaid says, "My name is Sehua." She explains, 20 years ago when I was young, a boy drowned in the ocean. I saved his life, and he named me Sehua. We became close friends after that. One day, the boy tells the mermaid, "I'm about to get married." The mermaid asks, "What is marriage?" The boy explains, "Marriage means living one's life with another girl. After this, I won't be able to meet you anymore." The boy had fallen in love with the mermaid, so he asks her, "Can you live on land?" The mermaid replies, "I'm still young. That will only be possible when I grow up." The mermaid couldn't stay on land, and the boy couldn't live in the water. Because of this, the mermaid leaves. When the boy gets married on the first night of his wedding, he leaves everything behind and comes to the sea to meet the mermaid. He didn't know that the mermaid had a special power. She could erase anyone's memory by kissing them. The mermaid did the same to him. At that moment, the king says to the mermaid, "On the day of my wedding, my wife died due to an illness." She used to say, "The reason for my death is your running away." But the king didn't remember anything about that night. Then he asks the mermaid, "Am I that boy?" Hearing this, the mermaid is also shocked. Then the scene shifts to the present. Junjae finds out that the girl is a mermaid. She kisses him and erases his memory before leaving. Later, Junjae is on the shore. When he regains consciousness, he remembers everything except for anything about the mermaid. He looks at the green bracelet in his hand, which the mermaid had given him. Junjae then boards a flight to Seoul. From the sea, the mermaid watches him leave, feeling very sad. Junjae returns to his home, where his two friends who used to help him in his thefts are living. He asks them to leave the house, but they stay there against his wishes. One of Junjae's friends asks him about the green bracelet, but Junjae says, "I don't remember anything." Then his friend shows him some pictures Junjae had supposedly sent, but Junjae says, "I didn't send these pictures, but yes, I do have a green bracelet." On the other hand, the mermaid thinks of reaching Seoul through the sea. She then asks some boatmen, "What's the route to Seoul?" They show her the way, and although they offer to take her there, she declines. When she reaches Seoul, she is surprised to see people everywhere. She asks everyone, "Do you know Junjae?" But no one knows anything. Feeling hungry, she goes to a shop, but because she has no money, she is thrown out. At that moment, Junjae's car passes by, but the two don't see each other. Later, the mermaid notices some girls harassing another girl and taking her money. So the mermaid grabs a small girl and asks her, "Can you give me some money? I'm hungry." The girl buys her noodles, gives her some money, and says, "Spend this little by little and try to find a job." As the girl is leaving, she bumps into Junjae and calls him uncle before walking away. Junjae remarks, "What a mischievous girl, calling me uncle," and just walking off. In the next scene, Junjae and his friends are returning after completing their mission. Meanwhile, the mermaid finds a coat in a trash can and puts it on. A beggar sitting nearby tells her, "That looks really good on you." Then the beggar asks the mermaid, "Wait, where are you from?" The mermaid replies, "I'm from the sea and looking for Junjae." The beggar asks her, "Is he your boyfriend? Do you have his number?" The mermaid shakes her head no. The beggar then says, "There must be a place he used to mention." That's when the mermaid remembers the name Building 60. The beggar writes Building 60 on her hand. The mermaid takes a bus and reaches Building 60. Inside the building, she sees a large aquarium. Looking at it makes her happy and she thinks, "Now I won't have to stay hungry." Then the mermaid goes into the aquarium and turns back into a mermaid. The next day is Junjae's birthday. Junjae's childhood friend, Cha-shi, asks her maid to prepare soup and dishes for him. The maid tells her, "It is my son's birthday as well." Cha-shi takes all the food to Junjae and lies, saying, "I made it myself." When Junjae drinks the soup, it reminds him of his mother, as she used to make the exact same soup. Cha-shi and her friend talk to Junjae about having a party, but Junjae leaves saying, "I have an appointment." Then Cha-shi asks Junjae's friend, "Does Junjae like someone else?" The friend replies, "I don't think he could do something like that." On the other side, Cha-shi's maid is looking at a photo of her son. it is revealed that the maid is actually Junjae's mother. On his birthday, Junjae used to visit the aquarium with his mother when he was a child. For this reason, he goes to the aquarium again on this day. The mermaid is inside the water at the aquarium. People think the mermaid show has started and begin taking pictures of her. Junjae is also there, and the mermaid sees him. Junjae also notices the mermaid, but does not recognize her because she had erased his memory. The mermaid comes out of the aquarium to meet Junjae. Meanwhile, Junjae's friend sends him a picture showing Junjae and the mermaid together, where the mermaid is wearing the green bracelet. After seeing the picture, Junjae realizes that this is the same girl he saw at the aquarium. He goes to find the mermaid, and eventually they come face to face. Both of them just keep looking at each other. The mermaid remembers her past, when she had erased Junjae's memory. She had apologized to him and said, "I will never forget you. I will always remember you." Then she had given him the green bracelet. A flashback scene shows the time when the village chief found out that a mermaid had entered their village. She was stealing people's clothes and shoes, leaving behind a precious pearl in return. This made the chief and his wife greedy. The chief wanted to capture the mermaid to become rich. The mermaid in human form had entered the village, and this news spread quickly. The villagers wanted to kill her, believing that the mermaid was responsible for a storm. The king also learns that a mermaid has come to the village and says, "She must have come to meet me because she had promised we would watch the snowfall together." The king sets out to find the mermaid. The chief's men approach the mermaid and prepare to attack her because the chief had told them, "If you strike her feet, she will lose all her powers." Just as they are about to attack, the king arrives and saves the mermaid. The scene then shifts to the present. Chachi's sister-in-law has the maid, who is Junjae's mother, pack food for someone. This food is being eaten by a wealthy family, who turn out to be Junjae's father, his second wife, and their son. While eating, Junjae's father remembers his first wife, who used to make similarly delicious food. Later, while driving, Junjae's father asks his driver, "Where is Junjae now?" The driver replies, "He has left the city." Meanwhile, Junjae's stepmother, Seo-hee, is listening to this conversation because she has planted a voice recorder in the car. She then calls someone and plans to have Junjae disappear. On the other side, Junjae and the mermaid have met. Junjae asks the mermaid, "Do you know me?" But the mermaid does not reply. Then Junjae asks for her name, and the mermaid says, "I don't have a name." Hearing this, Junjae starts laughing and says, "You're so strange." Then he takes her outside and asks her about the time spent in Spain, but the mermaid doesn't say anything. So he starts to leave, and the mermaid follows him, but he goes far away from her. Then a thief tricks the mermaid into going with him, but Junjae arrives and saves the mermaid from the thief. He explains to her, "Don't trust people like him." After this, they go to watch a fireworks event. When the fireworks start, the mermaid jumps on Junjae and says, "I will save you." Junjae tells her, "Open your eyes and watch the fireworks." Hearing this, the mermaid remembers her past, when Junjae had told her about fireworks in Spain. Then Junjae is heading home, but the mermaid follows him, saying, "Take me with you." Junjae refuses and says, "I can't take a young woman to my house." Then Junjae writes his phone number on her hand and says, "If you feel like telling me something, call me." As he is about to leave, he feels pity for the mermaid and decides to take her with him. While they are leaving, Seo-hee's men follow them. Junjae outsmarts them and escapes. On the other side, Chachi finds a pot with a painting of a man and a mermaid kissing. Meanwhile, Junjae takes the mermaid to his house, where his friends are surprised to see her. The mermaid first looks around the house and then goes to the swimming pool. Looking at it, she says, "There's nothing to eat in this." Junjae's friend cooks noodles for her and asks, "Where is your home?" The mermaid replies, "Very far away." Junjae tells his friend, "I brought her here because I want to ask her something." Then he shows the mermaid a green bracelet and asks, "Did you give this to me?" The mermaid says, "Yes, because you liked it." Then the mermaid says, "There are many like this near my home." Hearing this, Junjae's friend gets greedy and says to Junjae, "Let her stay here for a few days." Then Junjae starts questioning the mermaid, "Why did you give this to me?" But, as always, the mermaid stays silent and doesn't say anything. This makes Junjae angry. His friend calms him down and says, "She must have a reason, that's why she isn't telling." Then Junjae's friend asks the mermaid her name, but she says, "I don't have a name." At that moment, Junjae's friend offers to name her, but the mermaid says to Junjae, "You give me a name." Junjae names her Shim Cheong. This makes the mermaid very happy, and she goes to Junjae's other friend to tell him her name. Just then, the doorbell rings, and Chachi arrives with a cake because it's Junjae's birthday. Seeing the mermaid, Chachi asks, "Who is she? Is she your guest?" At that moment, the mermaid confidently says, "My name is Shim Cheong." Then a floor cleaning machine bumps into the mermaid, and she gets scared and clings to Junjae. Watching this, Junjae's friends laugh, but Chashu feels jealous. Then everyone celebrates the birthday. Before cutting the cake, Shim Cheong grabs a lot of cake in her hands and starts eating like crazy. Junjae says, "Eat calmly, no one will take it from you." Chashu feeds Junjae cake with her hands and whispers something in his ear, laughing. Seeing this, Shim Cheong eats cake like Chashu. Then Junjae's friend tells Chashu, "Her mental state isn't stable, so I let her stay here for a few days. You don't need to feel insecure." Then Junjae gives the room above his own to Shim Cheong. On the other hand, Seo Hee's man is checking all the houses to find Junjae. One homeowner gets suspicious and threatens to hand him over to the police, but the man kills the homeowner. At night, when Junjae is returning home, his friend comes and tells him, "One of our neighbors has been murdered and the police are investigating there. If you go, you might get involved." However, Junjae, worried about Shim Cheong being alone at home, leaves to go there. Meanwhile, Shim Cheong is waiting for Junjae at home. Just then, the doorbell rings. When she opens the door, the same man, Dae Young, who had committed the murder, is standing there. He pretends to be a police officer and says, "I've come to investigate the murder." When he enters, Junjae also arrives, and the police show up as well. Dae Young escapes. Then the police ask Junjae for his ID and he gives them a fake ID, saving himself. Next, we see a flashback where the village chief's men are about to attack the mermaid. Just then, the king arrives and saves the mermaid's life. The king takes the mermaid home with him. As they leave together, a spy from the chief sees them and informs the chief. Then, a villager comes to the chief and starts threatening him because the chief has been doing a lot of corrupt activities with the villagers. Now, on the seashore, people find a dead body, and the body is that of the same man who had come to speak with the chief. The doctor and the king arrive there, but they are unable to determine the cause of death. Then the people there say that the death was caused by the mermaid. The king becomes suspicious of the chief and tells him, "I will find out whether this man died because of the mermaid or due to someone's conspiracy." Then the chief's wife goes to the king's house as part of her plan and says, "We have learned that the mermaid is here, so we have come to search the palace." When the king hears this, he immediately goes toward his palace. There, the mermaid is sitting and looking at a pot that depicts a human and a mermaid kissing. This scene had appeared in the king's dream, so he had drawn that dream on the pot. Then the present scene is shown. Shim Cheong looks at the scar on Junjae's hand and asks about it. Junjae explains to her, "Don't open the door for just anyone." Then Shim Cheong points to the TV and asks, "Where did the tiny people inside this go? Tell them to come outside." Hearing which, Junjae starts laughing. Then, to tease Shim Cheong, he says, "They are my tenants. I'll call them and ask." He pretends to make a phone call, and Shim Cheong sits beside him and listens to him. Then Junjae asks her, "What happened between us in Spain?" But Shim Cheong doesn't answer and instead says, "It's okay. I'll wait until the next episode because I'm an expert at waiting." Hearing this, Junjae gets angry and says, "You have only until tomorrow. If you don't tell me anything by tomorrow, leave my house." Later, when Junjae is about to sleep, Shim Cheong peeks her face and hair out of her room's window to look at him, which scares Junjae. She asks him, "Won't your friends come today?" Junjae tells her, "They won't come today." Hearing this, Shim Cheong says, "That means today it's just the two of us alone at home." And then she starts laughing like crazy. Seeing her laughter, Junjae says, "When you laugh, you look even scarier." Then Shim Cheong starts coming downstairs towards Junjae. Junjae says, "Come downstairs. Anyway, you're leaving tomorrow, so it's better if you leave today." Hearing this, Shim Cheong starts going upstairs and thinking to herself says, "I wish you never come tomorrow." Next morning, Chashu comes to meet Junjae, but Shim Cheong doesn't let her in, saying, "You're a stranger." Then, suddenly, she opens the door, causing Chashu to fall. She learns from Shim Cheong that Junjae has gone jogging. Then Chashu tells Shim Cheong, "Junjae and I are going to get married soon." Shim Cheong asks her, "What is marriage?" Chashu explains to her, "Then we will live together, love each other, and take care of each other." Hearing this, Shim Cheong says, "That's what we are doing right now." Chashu laughs and says, "That doesn't mean it's marriage. You're a burden on Junjae and forcing him to live with you." Then she points towards the door, telling Shim Cheong to go. Shim Cheong gets angry and bites Chashu's finger. In the next scene, Chashi is sitting with a bandaged finger, and Junjae scolds Shim-cheong, who bites like a crazy dog. Then Junjae takes Chashi to the taxi. Chashi tells him about the pot's contents, but Junjae doesn't pay attention to what she says and leaves. Meanwhile, Shim-cheong is watching TV at home, and a kissing scene comes on. Seeing this, she gets embarrassed. As soon as Junjae arrives, she leaves. Junjae, watching TV, says, "Oh, she was watching all this." Then Junjae cooks food and asks Shim-cheong to eat. After the meal, he gives her a phone and instructions for public transport. He saves his number in the phone and teaches her how to use it. He says, "Call me whenever you want to tell me something." Then he asks Shim-cheong to leave his house. Shim-cheong asks him for a promise. "Next time, meet me when it's snowing. I need to tell you something important." Then, pointing towards a building, she says, "We will meet here." Junjae agrees, and Shim-cheong leaves. After she leaves, Junjae has placed a location tracking device in her phone so that he can find out where she is going and who she is meeting. Then, Junjae's friends tell him, "You sent her out in this cold. She doesn't have money." In response, Junjae says, "I'm not her guardian and I can't keep her here forever." Then Junjae goes to his room, checks her location, and sees that Shim-cheong is going somewhere far. He decides to leave the house to go after her. Meanwhile, Shim-cheong arrives at the beggar's place. The beggar asks her, "Did your friend send you out of the house?" Shim-cheong says, "No, he didn't tell me to leave, just to go." The beggar says, "It's the same thing." Then both of them take clothes from the dustbin that are thrown out by rich people. Shim-cheong asks the beggar, "How do you make money?" The beggar shows her some pamphlets and explains how she gives them out to people. Shim-cheong says, "I'll do the same and make a lot of money, and then I'll give it to Junjae because he likes money." Junjae, tracking Shim-cheong's location, arrives there. He sees Shim-cheong giving out pamphlets, but no one is taking them. Just then, a group of schoolboys arrives and takes the pamphlets. These boys were sent by Junjae, and he also gives them money. Shim-cheong is hungry. Then a woman comes, takes a pamphlet from her, and gives her some food. This woman had also been sent by Junjae. The woman asks Junjae, "Are you going to marry this girl?" Junjae replies, "There's nothing like that." Just then, a man approaches Shim-cheong and asks her to give him her number. As soon as Shim-cheong takes out her phone, Junjae's call comes through. He says, "Don't give your number to any stranger. Such people are bad." Shim-cheong starts staring at the man, and the man leaves, calling her strange. Then Shim-cheong asks Junjae, "Where are you?" Junjae replies, "I'm very far from you." Just then, Shim-cheong spots him and says, "You came here to see me, didn't you?" Junjae says, "No, I was just passing by." Then Shim-cheong whispers in his ear, "I am earning money here, and I'll give all the money to you. You like money, don't you?" Hearing this, Junjae starts to think. Next, it's nighttime as Shim-cheong continues handing out pamphlets. Suddenly, Dae-young appears in front of her, and Shim-cheong recognizes him. It starts raining, so Shim-cheong stands under a building. The little girl who had met Shim-cheong earlier also comes there again. The girl asks, "What are you doing here? Are you taking money from kids again?" Shim-cheong replies, "No, I'm earning money." Then it starts snowing. When it starts snowing, Shim-cheong remembers she had to meet Junjae. So she asks the girl for the address of the tower. The girl tells her the address, and Shim-cheong sets off to meet Junjae. On the other hand, seeing the snowfall, Junjae remembers Shim-cheong's words and decides to go meet her. Junjae checks her location and finds out that Shim-cheong is heading towards the tower at a fast pace. On the way, Shim-cheong gets hit by a car, and the driver is none other than Junjae's stepbrother, Hyun. Junjae, waiting at the tower, has no idea about the accident. Then, we are shown a flashback where the chief's wife enters the king's palace to search for the mermaid. But before she arrives, the king's friend had already taken the mermaid to a safe place and told her, "Stay here until the king comes." While the king's friend is leaving, the chief's men follow him, and he falls into a ravine. When the king comes home, he sees that his room is in disarray, and he sets out to search for the mermaid. Night falls, but the king cannot find her. The scene returns to the present, where Junjae is still waiting for Shim-cheong at the tower. Meanwhile, Hyun takes Shim-cheong to the hospital. When Junjae is on his way back home, he notices the same pamphlets that Shim-cheong was distributing. There, he also finds Shim-cheong's phone, confirming that she got into an accident. Junjae becomes very worried and goes to all the nearby hospitals, checking the beds one by one. Finally, he finds Shim-cheong unconscious on one of the beds. Junjae calls the doctor to treat her, but it makes no difference. Holding her hand, he starts crying. At that moment, Shim-cheong remembers her past, where the king had helped her. Shim-cheong regains consciousness and says to Junjae, I had a dream where you held my hand and saved me. Meanwhile, Junjae's friends also find out about Shim Cheong's accident and head to the hospital. Shim Cheong is now feeling much better and is very happy to see Junjae by her side. Scolding her, Junjae says, "Who crosses the road in such a hurry?" Just then, his friends arrive and say, "Why are you yelling at her? This happened because of you, as you're the one who made her leave the house." In the next scene, Junjae finds out that the person who hit Shim Cheong was none other than Hyun. He asks him, "Did you do this intentionally?" Hyun replies, "No, it was just an accident." After this, we are shown a flashback where Junjae is angry at Hyun because he had broken the photo frame of Junjae's mother. Hyun says, "I didn't break it intentionally. It happened by mistake." They get into a fight over this, and their father supports Hyun and takes him away. Seeing all this, Junjae starts crying. Back in the present, Junjae is talking to Hyun when their father also arrives. After years, Junjae sees his father again. Just then, their driver notices Junjae. Meanwhile, Shim Cheong is shifted to another normal ward in the hospital, and she is told, "You will stay here now." Shim Cheong asks, "Will I stay here forever?" Junjae's friend replies, "No, just for a few days." Next, Shim Cheong notices that everyone else is getting food, but she doesn't. She is told to remain hungry. She calls Junjae and says, "Everyone else got food, but I didn't." Junjae sends food for her and hides outside the room, watching her eat. Seeing her eat, he starts smiling. Then he says to himself, "Why am I feeling so happy because of this girl?" and leaves from there. While leaving the hospital, Junjae meets his father's secretary, the same driver. They go to a place to talk. Junjae calls him Uncle. The man had taken great care of Junjae since his childhood. One day, Junjae had told him, "I am leaving this house to find my mom and I will stay with her now. After I leave, please take care of my dad." Junjae says to his uncle, "You kept your promise, but I didn't." Then the uncle tells him, "Your father is looking for you and wants to make things right." Junjae doesn't say anything and walks away. Meanwhile, Dae-young, disguised with a different face, listens to their conversation. At the hospital, Shim Cheong is enjoying herself, watching TV with another patient. In the next scene, the doctors tell Shim Cheong, "You are completely fine now, so you can go home." Hearing this, Shim Cheong becomes sad and says, "Are you kicking me out because I eat too much? But I don't even have a home. Where will I go?" Just then, Junjae arrives and says, "Come with me to my house." Hearing this, Shim Cheong becomes happy. Both of them are in the car, and Shim Cheong asks Junjae, "When will the next snowfall happen?" Junjae replies, "The next snowfall will be next year." Hearing this, Shim Cheong says, "Maybe I won't be here by then." Then Junjae says, "Do you want to see snowfall? Let's go see it now." In the next scene, the driver tells Junjae's father, "I met Junjae. I told him that you want to meet him, but he is not ready to meet you yet." Seo-hee is secretly listening to this conversation. As the driver drops Junjae's father home and is returning, he notices a voice recorder in the car and thinks it must be Seo-hee's doing. At that moment, Dae-young appears there. In the next scene, Junjae takes Shim Cheong to a snowy place. Seeing the snowfall, Shim Cheong becomes very happy and says, "You are very nice." Then they both go skating. When Shim Cheong is about to fall, Junjae tries to save her, but they both fall together. Then they laugh like kids. Junjae says to her, "There's something I want to tell you." Shim Cheong asks, "What?" Junjae says to her, "I love you." Then we are shown a scene from the past. The king is searching for the mermaid in the forest. Suddenly, he finds his friend in an injured state. The king takes him to a healer for treatment. The king then thinks, "My friend put his life in danger to save my love." On the other hand, the chief's men capture the mermaid. The king has now learned about the chief's intentions, so he gathers evidence against him and has him arrested. The chief's wife is also caught. The king holds a sword to her neck and asks her about the mermaid. She points towards a room. When the king enters the room, he is shocked to see the unconscious mermaid. The mermaid is tied with ropes, and her body is covered with bruises. Around her are many pearls, which are actually her tears. The chief's wife wanted to sell those pearls and become rich. Now the chief's wife shouts to everyone, "Look! The king is protecting this murderous mermaid." To distract everyone, the king throws all the pearls towards the crowd. The people start gathering the pearls, and the king takes the mermaid away from there. Then we are shown the present, where Junjae tells Shim Cheong, "I love you." Shim Cheong smiles and says, "Now you're mine," meaning you've admitted defeat. Then she laughs and says, "I admitted defeat during the first snowfall." Junjae says, "You've gone crazy." Shim Cheong says, "But someone told me that this is called love." Junjae, curious, asks, "Who told you that?" Shim Cheong, referring to Junjae himself, says, "He's a very nice person, and he has taken great care of me." Hearing this, Junjae becomes jealous and asks, who is he? Then he says, he must be crazy. You should stay away from people like that. Shim Cheong defends him and says, why are you saying bad things about him? He's a very good person. Junjae angrily says, then go to him. What are you doing here with me? I said, I love you just to know something. You're misunderstanding me. Then Shim Cheong says, I love you. Junjae says, stop it. Have you gone mad? In the next scene, Junjae is in his room trying to sleep, but he can't. His mind is stuck on Shim Cheong's words. He calls out to her and says, hey, upstairs. Listen. Shim Cheong comes down immediately. Junjae says, I can't sleep. Weird thoughts are coming to my mind. Do you still meet him? Are you still with him? Shim Cheong replies, yes, we are together. Junjae, irritated, asks, what kind of guy is he? Shim Cheong smiles, looks at Junjae and says, he's very sweet. Hearing this, Junjae becomes even more jealous and says, you should stay away from guys like that. Shim Cheong then says, I even told him I love you. Junjae angrily says, you say this to everyone. It's so easy for you. Then he says, now go to sleep. In the next scene, Junjae falls asleep and dreams of a past scene where the king's friend was injured. The face of that friend resembled Junjae's dad's secretary. Junjae immediately calls his uncle, but the call doesn't connect. The next day, Junjae's dad learns that his secretary has had an accident. This accident was caused by Dae Young. On the other hand, Junjae and his friend Cha Shi are planning to rob someone, unaware that the target is Cha Shi's sister-in-law. At that moment, Shim Cheong arrives and asks them, what kind of work do you do? Junjae jokingly says, we take care of the money of greedy people. In the next scene, Junjae and his friend go outside, and after they leave, Shim Cheong also steps out. Outside, Dae Young is following her. Just then, the police arrive and spot Dae Young. However, Dae Young tricks the police and escapes. Meanwhile, Shim Cheong pulls out clothes for herself from a trash box. At that moment, she sees the same little girl who had helped her earlier being bullied by other girls. Shim Cheong says to the girls, you shouldn't bully your friend like this. Here, Junjae and his friend are going somewhere, and his friend asks him why he's doing all this. Junjae tells him everything, and then we see a flashback. Junjae was searching for his mom when Namdoo, pretending to be a fake detective, stole his money and left. Later, Junjae finds Namdoo and says, instead of stealing from the poor, you should steal from the rich. Hearing this, Namdoo says, work with me, and the two start stealing from wealthy people. Junjae says, I will do this work until I find my mom and earn enough money to buy her a house. Now, Junjae has a lot of money, but his mom is still not with him. Meanwhile, Shim Cheong is near a pond and is about to jump into the water when a man stops her. That man is a male mermaid, and his name is Jong-hoon. Both are shocked to see each other. Jong-hoon says, I never thought I'd meet a mermaid on land. Shim Cheong says, I was hungry and had no money, so I was going to jump into the water to catch and eat fish. Jong-hoon says, you don't know anything about this place. Then he shows Shim Cheong a precious pearl and says, these are our tears, and these pearls are sold for a lot of money here. Shim Cheong asks, are these really our tears? Then Shim Cheong learns from Jong-hoon how to collect her tears and says, I will also make pearls and give them to Junjae because he loves money a lot. Jong-hoon tells her, if you stay on land for too long, you will die, and it's essential for Junjae to love you back. Hearing this, Shim Cheong becomes sad, but Jong-hoon says, I promise to help you. Then he shares his story, saying, after falling in love with a girl, she left me when she found out the truth about me. He warns Shim Cheong, don't let Junjae find out the truth about you. After that, they both try to collect money by shedding tears. Then they get a makeover, put on new clothes, and go to Junjae's house. When Junjae opens the door, Jong-hoon says, I am Shim Cheong's friend. Jealous, Junjae sends Shim Cheong inside the house and closes the door. At night, Junjae's friend tries to steal the green bracelet, but Junjae stops him and says, I want to give the bracelet to Shim Cheong when she goes back. The next morning, Shim Cheong comes out in fashionable clothes. Junjae's friends keep staring at her, but Junjae gets embarrassed and says, go and change your clothes. During breakfast, Junjae stops Shim Cheong from cleaning the house. His friend says, I'll help her, but Junjae refuses. Later, everyone leaves the house. Junjae forgets his phone at home and returns to get it. Meanwhile, Shim Cheong is cleaning the house. While cleaning, she feels like swimming and jumps into the pool, turning into a mermaid. When Junjae arrives, he sees Shim Cheong in the swimming pool. Shim Cheong thinks that her truth will now be revealed, but Junjae can only see her briefly. Then Shim Cheong says, leave. In the meantime, she puts on clothes and comes outside. Then Junjae scolds her, how can you be so careless? There are 3 men living in this house. You should be careful. Then Junjae tells his 2 friends, whenever you come home, ring the doorbell. In the next scene, Shim Cheong tells Jong-hoon, my truth was almost revealed to Junjae today, but I got saved. Jong-hoon says, you should have been more careful. Then Junjae goes to meet Chashi. Chashi shows him a pot with a picture of a human and a mermaid kissing. Seeing it, Junjae remembers something. Then, Junjae goes to the doctor with his memory problem. He tells the doctor, "Ever since I went to Spain, I don't remember anything from there, and I have strange dreams." The doctor tells him this could happen to anyone. Then the doctor hypnotizes Junjae. Junjae sees his past, the village chief, his friend, and as soon as he sees the mermaid's face, he suddenly wakes up. Junjae cannot understand anything and thinks that maybe this is just an illusion. When Junjae comes home, he sees that Shim Cheong is about to go out. At that moment, Junjae announces, "From today onwards, there is a curfew. Anyone who comes home after 8 p.m. will have to sleep outside." It is already 7:30 p.m., so Shim Cheong decides not to leave and says, "I will go tomorrow." Then Junjae's friend asks Shim Cheong, "Where were you going?" Shim Cheong says, "I was going to get some money," and then shows him the same pearls, which are her tears. Junjae's friend slyly steals one pearl from her bag. In the next scene, Shim Cheong goes to meet Jong-hoon. Suddenly, Jong-hoon starts feeling pain in his chest. He says, "I don't have much time left. I could die anytime, and that's why I'm feeling this pain in my chest. Also, my girlfriend is now married, so she will never come back to me." Shim Cheong says, "Why don't you go back to the sea?" He replies, "There is no point in going there. I'm going to die anyway, but you still have time. You should return to the sea." But Shim Cheong refuses and says, "If I go back, I will miss Junjae." Then Junjae remembers his uncle and calls him, but his phone is still off. So Junjae sends him a message, but his uncle's phone is with Dae-young. Dae-young replies, pretending to be the uncle, saying, "I'm fine," and invites him to meet. At night, Shim Cheong is unable to sleep, so she goes to Junjae and asks him, "When will you fall in love with me?" Junjae replies, "Love doesn't happen intentionally, it just happens." Shim Cheong says, "When you fall in love with me, let me know." In the next scene, Junjae is going to the library, and Shim Cheong comes to him and asks, "Have you decided to fall in love with me?" Junjae replies, "Who can fall in love in just one day?" Then Junjae reads about King Kim in a historic book and learns that the king died at the age of 27. Then we are shown a flashback where the mermaid is taken to a healer. The healer says, if the mermaid stays here too long, she will die, so she needs to be sent back to the sea quickly. The king gives the mermaid a green bracelet to wear. In the next scene, Shim Cheong goes to meet Jong-hoon, where she learns that Jong-hoon has died of a heart attack. Hearing this, she becomes very sad. Then Junjae receives a message from Dae-young, who pretends to be his uncle, and calls him to a location. When Junjae reaches there, he sees that the place is old. He calls his uncle to search for him when Shim Cheong calls. Shim Cheong says, "I am not feeling well. Can you meet me?" Next, Dae-young tries to kill Junjae, but Junjae's friends arrive with police cars to save him. Junjae had already called his friends and told them the place seemed suspicious, so they had come there. Then Junjae goes to Shim Cheong, checks her fever, and asks her, "What happened to you?" Shim Cheong says, "I am leaving from here." Junjae says, "You had asked me about love. Now I love you, so don't go." Then we are shown a scene from the past where the king is sitting, holding the mermaid's injured hand. When the mermaid regains consciousness, she says, "I have to return to the sea, but I will continue to love you." The king says, "I refuse to erase my memories," and they kiss each other. Then the present day scene is shown. Shim Cheong talks about leaving, but Junjae confesses his love to her, and they hug each other. When they return home, Junjae's friend asks him, "Why did you go there?" Junjae replies, "Dae-young messaged me, pretending to be my uncle." Then Dae-young's picture is shown on TV, and Shim Cheong also recognizes him as the person following her. Junjae yells, "Why didn't you tell me about this earlier?" On the other hand, Dae-young disguises himself as a delivery man, goes to Seo-hee's house, and collects money from her. The next morning, Junjae finds out that Shim Cheong is not at home. He gets very angry because Dae-young is roaming outside and could harm her. He checks Shim Cheong's location on his phone and leaves to find her. Shim Cheong is with her beggar friend. Junjae arrives there and says, "Let's go," taking Shim Cheong away with him. In the next scene, Junjae's dad is at the hospital for an eye checkup. Junjae comes to meet his uncle, and Shim Cheong is sitting outside. At that moment, Junjae's dad and Hyung arrive, and Shim Cheong asks them, "Are you Junjae's family?" The dad replies, "Do you know Junjae?" Then Junjae arrives there. In the next scene, Junjae talks to his dad. Junjae says, "When mom and I needed you the most, you married someone else and abandoned us." Junjae's dad tries to explain, but Junjae doesn't listen and leaves. Then Junjae goes to his room, falls asleep, and becomes unwell. When he opens his eyes, he sees Shim Cheong taking care of him. Shim Cheong says, "I will never give up and will always stay with you." Junjae says, "I couldn't say what I wanted to say to my dad." Then he starts crying. and Shim Cheong hugs him. The next morning, Junjae is making breakfast for Shim Cheong. Shim Cheong comes out wearing makeup, and Junjae blushes when he sees her. Junjae's friend takes her picture, but Junjae says, "Send the picture to me," and deletes it from his friend's phone. On the other hand, Seo-hee gives Junjae's dad medicine, but he doesn't know that this medicine is worsening his condition. Then Junjae and his friends plan to trick Cha-shi's sister-in-law, and they need a girl for the plan. At that moment, Shim Cheong comes and asks, "What work?" Namdoo explains, "We have to act out a drama where Junjae will play a very rich man, and you have to become his fiancé." Shim Cheong says, "I will do it." Then Junjae and Shim Cheong, acting as a couple, go to the mall for shopping. Cha-shi's sister-in-law is also there. Namdoo tells her, "They are very rich people from Dubai, and I am with them because of an investment company." Cha-shi's sister-in-law says, "Bring them to our house for dinner someday." Namdoo replies, "All right." Then Cha-shi's sister-in-law comes home and tells her husband, "A very rich man and his fiancé are coming to our house for dinner. We're going to hit the jackpot." Cha-shi says, "This is all fraud." Then Cha-shi calls Junjae and says, "Meet me at the museum." Actually, she had found some belongings of King Kim. Junjae says, "I want to see this alone." As soon as Junjae enters the museum, he sees many belongings of the king and also sees a photo of King Kim, which looks exactly like him. Just then, Cha-shi calls Junjae from outside. Junjae comes out and says, "Go home," but Cha-shi goes inside to see the photo. Looking at the photo, Cha-shi says, "This photo looks exactly like you." The next day, Shim Cheong is waiting for Junjae. As soon as Junjae arrives, Shim Cheong asks, "What time is it?" Junjae replies, "It's 11 o'clock. Shim Cheong says, "The curfew time is until 8 o'clock, and you're coming home at 11? Junjae replies, "This rule is not for me. It's for the three of you who are living in my house for free." Then Junjae goes to sleep. Shim Cheong is angrily staring at him. Junjae asks, "Why are you looking at me like that?" Shim Cheong replies, "It's my choice. However I look, these are my eyes, and I own them." Then Shim Cheong goes upstairs to her room to sleep. While Junjae is sleeping, he has the same dream again, in which a mermaid is locked up and surrounded by many pearls. Then he wakes up. He goes to the kitchen, where Namdoo is drinking. Namdoo asks, "Did you see King Kim again?" Then Namdoo shows him Shim Cheong's pearls. Junjae looks at them and says, "These are the same pearls I saw in my dream." Then Namdoo says, "I want to find out about Shim Cheong." Junjae asks, "Why do you want to know about her?" Namdoo replies, "So that you don't become a good person. Ever since Shim Cheong came, you've been turning into a good person, and I'm afraid you might leave us." Junjae says, "Even I want to know the truth about Shim Cheong." Meanwhile, the police are gathering information about Dae Young. They find out that he has committed many murders. Here, Shim Cheong is trying to get a pink octopus from a toy machine, but despite many attempts, she cannot get it. Then a little girl comes there and says, "Today, my school is off, so I thought of meeting you." Here, Junjae is looking for Shim Cheong. He goes to her room, where he finds many pearls. Junjae wonders, where does Shim Cheong get these from? Coming downstairs, Junjae is looking for Shim Cheong. Just then, Shim Cheong comes home with the little girl. Junjae says, "How many times have I told you to keep your mobile charged? You never forget to eat, you should feed it too." Hearing this, the little girl says, "Phones don't get hungry, they are charged." Junjae asks, "Who are you?" Shim Cheong says, "She's my friend." Junjae says, "What kind of friends do you have? First that beggar, and now this girl." Hearing this, the little girl says, "Are you unemployed? At this time all men go to work, and you're watching TV." Junjae replies, "Not at all. I'm a freelancer, and I work from home." Then Junjae finds out that the little girl came there after bunking school. She says, "I don't feel like going to school. Nobody talks to me at school. I am different from everyone." Shim Cheong thinks to herself, "I am also different from everyone. And if Junjae finds out, he will hate me and leave me." In the next scene, Junjae gets a call from the hospital saying his uncle has regained consciousness. He goes to the hospital to meet him. His uncle's wife tells him he still cannot speak. Then the uncle's wife asks Junjae about his mother. Junjae says, "I don't know anything about her." She replies, "Your mom used to call me often, but she told me not to tell anyone about it." Junjae asks, "Can you tell me something about my mom?" She says, "I spoke to her many years ago. When you left home, I lied to her, saying you had gone abroad to study. After that, I never talked to her again." Then Junjae comes home and starts drinking. Shim Cheong joins him, and they both drink together. Shim Cheong drinks too much and loses consciousness. She's about to tell Junjae the truth about herself when suddenly she sobers up. Junjae starts wondering, how did she sober up so quickly? Then they drink again, and this time Junjae gets drunk. He starts acting strange. He calls Shim Cheong from his phone and says, "This girl never keeps her phone charged and doesn't answer my calls." Then he starts shouting Shim Cheong's name loudly. After that, Junjae comes close to Shim Cheong, hugs her, and says, "Never leave me. Always stay with me." In the next scene, Junjae's friend Tae tells Namdoo that Jinju, Chashi's sister-in-law, has the appointment for her pet today. Namdoo also takes his pet and goes to the hospital. Jinju sees him, gets happy, and asks, "Did you talk to those Dubai people about my dinner?" Namdoo says, "They're very busy these days, but I'll try." Jinju replies, "Okay, I'll wait for your call." In the next scene, Namdoo calls Jinju and says, "Kim and his fiancé are coming to your house for lunch this afternoon." Hearing this, Jinju gets very excited and starts preparing. She also explains to her husband, "We won't directly talk to them about investing money." At that time, Chashi is not at home. She has gone to the lab for some work. Junjae, Shim Cheong, and Namdoo get ready and arrive at Jinju's house. Jinju welcomes them warmly. Tai is outside in the car. During lunch, Junjae remembers his mom and says, "My mom used to cook food just like this." At that time, Junjae's mom, who is working there as a maid, brings the food, but Junjae only sees her from the back. When she goes into the kitchen, Junjae turns around to try to look at her but cannot see her. At that time, Chashir arrives home. Tai sees her, stops her, and asks, "What are you doing here?" Chashir replies, "This is my house." Tai changes the subject and says, "I need to talk to you about something important." Then he takes her to a cafe. There, he messages Namdoo and informs him about Chashi. Namdoo reads the message and informs Junjae, and they immediately leave Jinju's house. Jinju says to them, "Why are you leaving so soon? We still had more to talk about. Did we make a mistake?" Junjae replies, "No, something urgent has come up." As soon as they leave, Chashir comes home. Back at home, Junjae tells Namdoo, "You should have done a proper background check. We got ourselves into big trouble today." Shim Cheong hears this and asks, "Who is going to trap you?" Then Shim Cheong thinks to herself, "Junjae is a bad person who steals other people's money." Junjae hears her thoughts and replies in his mind, "Yes, I am a bad person. I earn money by taking it from others, and this is my secret. What is your secret?" Shim Cheong thinks to herself, "I have a secret. I am different from humans because I am a mermaid, and I've hidden this truth from you because if you find out, you will leave me." Hearing this, Junjae is deeply shocked, and Shim Cheong walks away. Junjae asks Namdoo, "Did you hear what Shim Cheong said?" Namdoo replies, "She didn't say anything. You both were just staring at each other." Then Junjae looks at the picture in his phone of the pot where a human and a mermaid are shown kissing. As he looks at the picture, he remembers his past. He recalls that he was the king, Kim, and he had met the mermaid in Spain. When he learned the mermaid's truth, she erased his memory. Now Junjae remembers everything about his past and realizes that Shim Cheong is actually a mermaid. He begins searching for her. Meanwhile, Dae-young has a nightmare where he remembers his past. In his dream, he was the chief of the village, and the king there was Kim Junjae. The girl living in Junjae's house was a mermaid. Then, Junjae goes home, where his friends inform him that Shim Cheong has taken all her belongings and left. This makes him even more worried. When he goes to his room, he looks at the room above his and is reminded of Shim Cheong. In the next scene, Shim Cheong goes to a place she knew about from seeing it on TV. A place for people who don't have a home. On the other side, Junjae and his friends are trying to track Shim Cheong through CCTV footage. Then Junjae asks Namdoo, "Have you heard the story of the human and the mermaid? What happens in the end?" Namdoo replies, "In the end, the mermaid dies." Junjae says, "That can't happen." Meanwhile, Shim Cheong is looking for a place to sleep, but she can't find any empty space. In the morning, Junjae goes to the beggar woman who used to meet Shim Cheong. He asks her about Shim Cheong, and she replies, "If you were a good person, Shim Cheong wouldn't have left you." Some girls steal Shim Cheong's phone and turn it on, which sends a message to Junjae, giving him Shim Cheong's location. Junjae immediately leaves for that place. When he gets there, he takes the phone from them and asks, "Where did you get this phone?" One of the girls says, "It's mine." At that moment, Junjae calls Shim Cheong from his phone and says, "This is my girlfriend's phone." In the next scene, Junjae finds Shim Cheong, hugs her, and says, "Who told you to leave home and live in a place like this?" Then Junjae asks Shim Cheong, "Did you eat anything?" Shim Cheong says yes, but deep down, she wanted to eat something tasty. Junjae hears her thoughts and says, "Come with me. I've made tasty food at home." But Shim Cheong refuses. Shim Cheong thinks to herself, "You are a thief and a liar, and you will deceive me too. But still, I love you, and it's hard to live without you." Junjae hears her thoughts and says, "If you don't want to go home, then stay here, but don't go anywhere else." Then he walks away from there. The police are investigating Dae-young's case and discover that there is a woman in his life, Kang Seo-hee. When they look into Seo-hee's history, they find out that she has been married twice before, and both her previous husbands have died. Meanwhile, Junjae's father's health continues to deteriorate, and Seo-hee is taking care of him. The father says, "I will have to visit the doctor again because the medicines are not working." Seo-hee tells him, "I have spoken to the doctor, and the doctor advised you to take the medicines on time and rest." In the next scene, Junjae returns home and is thinking about Shim Cheong. His friend Nam-do also enters his room, but Junjae, lost in thoughts about Shim Cheong, recalls their past moments and realizes that when Shim Cheong talked about a good person, she was talking about him. Thinking this, Junjae laughs loudly and Nam-do asks, "Why are you behaving so strangely?" Junjae then goes to the place where Shim Cheong is sleeping. There, another man is slowly trying to approach Shim Cheong. Junjae stops the man and then lies down near Shim Cheong to sleep. In the next scene, Cha-shi goes to the maid's room for some work and sees a family photo of the maid. Looking at the picture of the maid's son, Cha-shi says, "He looks very smart." In the following scene, Shim Cheong is standing near the swimming pool and is about to fall when Junjae saves her and ensures that her truth does not get revealed to anyone. Junjae even keeps the water cooler away from Shim Cheong. Seeing his actions, people there start calling him crazy. The women tell Shim Cheong, "When are you going home? Your husband has been troubling us a lot. Make up with him and go back home so we can have some peace." In the next scene, Shim Cheong, Junjae, and his friends go to a restaurant, and Dae-young is following them. Nam-do says, "It feels so nice now that Shim Cheong is back." Junjae tells Shim Cheong, "When you weren't at home, the fridge was full, but my heart was empty." Then Junjae asks his friends to go home and takes Shim Cheong outside. They go to a place where Junjae tells Shim Cheong, "Wait here, I'll be right back." He goes to buy a pink octopus for her. Meanwhile, the police arrive there looking for Dae-young, but they spot Junjae as well. The police arrest Junjae, and the pink octopus falls from his hand. Shim Cheong is waiting for him there. At that moment, Dae-young arrives and kidnaps Shim Cheong. Junjae requests the police, "Please release me. Shim Cheong's life is in danger and Dae-young might harm her." The police release Junjae. Dae-young is about to harm Shim Cheong when Junjae arrives and saves her. Then Junjae brings Shim Cheong back home. Nam-do tells him, "Did you see on TV? The police are searching for Dae-young everywhere." Just then, the police arrive there. Nam-do and Tai are shocked to see the police. Junjae puts Shim Cheong to sleep in her room. Then, the three of them provide evidence against Dae-young to the police. Junjae tells the police, "I will help you catch Dae-young and we will deal with my case later." Later, Shim Cheong is in her room thinking about Junjae. Junjae is listening to her thoughts, and because of this, he is unable to sleep. So Junjae goes to her room and says, "Now go to sleep. Don't think too much. In the morning, you also have to watch the show." Shim Cheong says, "Good night" to Junjae, but continues thinking about the same things. Junjae is unable to sleep at all due to her thoughts, and he becomes troubled. The next morning, Shim Cheong, Junjae, and his friends are having breakfast. Nam-do jokingly asks them, "Did you both not sleep last night?" Shim Cheong innocently replies, "Yes, I was lost in thought." Junjae also jokes, "Yes, she was walking around the room the whole night. I couldn't sleep either." Then, Junjae remembers, "How I saw Shim Cheong turning into a mermaid in the swimming pool." He tells his friends, "Today we will go get a Christmas tree," and tells Shim Cheong, "You stay at home and enjoy." Meanwhile, Junjae's father tells his lawyer, "I want to transfer all my property to Junjae." Hyung overhears this and feels very bad about it. At home, Junjae and his friends are preparing for Christmas. Cha-shi also arrives. When Shim Cheong gets ready and comes out, everyone praises her. Junjae can't take his eyes off her, but when Tai takes a picture of Shim Cheong, Junjae scolds him. In the next scene, Cha-shi, in a drunken state, calls Junjae and confesses, "I love you." Junjae finds all her words pointless because he is not interested in Cha-shi at all. Then Shim Cheong is sleeping on Junjae's bed thinking, "Does Junjae only see me as a fish?" Junjae tells her, "Go to sleep, don't think nonsense." The next morning, Cha-shi regains consciousness, and when she checks her phone, she remembers what I had said to Junjae. She feels embarrassed by her actions. In the next scene, Shim Cheong goes to Tai and asks him, "Do your cheeks always stay red?" Tai is blushing, so his cheeks become even redder. Shim Cheong says, "I'm bored of watching TV. Teach me how to use the computer. Can we find and learn something from it?" Tai asks, "What do you want to learn?" Shim Cheong whispers in his ear, "How to avoid getting trapped in someone's trap or love." At that moment, Junjae sees them together and angrily tells Tae, "Stay away from Shim Cheong." Shim Cheong says, "He's trying to teach me how to use the computer." Jealous, Junjae says, "I will teach you." Shim Chung thinks to herself, I want to know if Junjae loves me or if he is just trapping me. Junjae yells at Shim Chung but then says, alright, if you want to learn the computer, go ahead. Seo-hee is at the hospital with her husband when Junjae's mother spots them. However, Junjae's father, due to his weak eyesight, is unable to see them. Then Seo-hee approaches and takes Junjae's father and leaves. In the next scene, Junjae goes to his room and Shim Chung says, I want to ask you something. But then she thinks to herself, I don't know if Junjae loves me. She then says, it's nothing, and starts leaving her room. But Junjae stops her and kisses her. Shim Chung feels very happy and can't sleep due to the joy, while Junjae falls asleep. Junjae has a dream in which he is about to kill Mermaid. He wakes up and says, no! When he opens his eyes, Shim Chung is in front of him. Shim Chung asks, did you have a bad dream? Junjae hugs her and says, yes, I had a bad dream. Then he tells her, I love you and you should always stay with me. Shim Chung thinks to herself, is he telling the truth or is he just deceiving me? She then begins to leave her room. Junjae stops her and says, come sleep by my side. If I sleep while hugging you, I won't have bad dreams. She is so happy that she can't sleep. She goes to the balcony and shouts loudly, Junjae loves me. In the next scene, Seo-hee is talking to a lawyer who is secretly collaborating with her. She says, you made the agreement correctly, right? Where all the property should be transferred to me and my son. The lawyer replies, you should also transfer a small portion of the property to Junjae. Seo-hee says, if you do this work properly, I will give you a lot of money. Then, the lawyer takes all the documents to Junjae's father. Junjae's father cannot see anything written on the papers, so he just stamps them. Young watches all of this. The next morning, Shim Chung is shifting all the furniture around the house. Namdoo asks, did you do all of this by yourself? Shim Chung replies, I couldn't sleep, so I did all of this. Namdoo calls her a strong girl. Shim Chung is so happy that she thinks to herself, Junjae loves me. Junjae hears this and smiles, saying, thank goodness only I can hear all of this. Then Junjae asks her, what do you want to eat? Shim Chung says, pasta. But since the ingredients for the pasta are incomplete, Shim Chung goes to buy the missing items. On the way, she helps many people. Then everyone is having breakfast. Junji tells them, from today I have quit all my bad habits. Hearing this, Junji's friends are shocked. Later, Namdoo privately asks Junjae, how could you give up such habits? Junjae replies, I promised Shim Cheong that I would quit all my bad habits. Namdoo tries to make him understand. Just then, Junjae gets a call from the police and ignores Namdoo's words, leaving. Then, Junjae joins the police in searching for evidence against Dae Young. In the next scene, Cha Shi asks her maid, bring some things to Junjae's house. Miss Yu is on her way to get the items when a thief snatches her purse. Shim Cheong is there and chases after the thief, getting the purse back. She beats the thief and gives the purse back to Miss Yu. Miss Yu is shocked and says, thank you. In the next scene, Cha Shi invites Miss Yu to Junjae's house, where Miss Yu meets Shim Cheong again. Miss Yu says, I'm happy to see you? Cha Shi asks, do you two know each other? Miss Yu explains how Shim Cheong helped her. Then, Cha Shi goes to Junjae's room to place the file of King Kim. There, she notices a photo of Junjae and his mother, which makes her suspicious because she had seen a similar photo in Miss Yu's room. Then, she takes Miss Yu back to her house, where she sees the same photo in Miss Yu's room, and realizes that Miss Yu is Junjae's mother. In the next scene, Junjae's father's health deteriorates further. He can no longer see anything. He calls out, wife, who is standing right next to him, but gets no response. Suddenly, Junjae's father falls down the stairs. Young arrives and takes him to the hospital. At the hospital, the doctor says, we need to keep him under observation for a few days. In the next scene, Junjae is looking at the file that Cha Shi had left in his room. As he looks at the file, memories of his past begin to resurface. Just then, Shim Chung arrives and asks, what happened? Junjae replies, nothing. In the next scene, Seo-hee calls Dae Young and angrily says, why aren't you picking up my calls? And why did you kidnap that girl? Dae Young tells her, I had a dream. That girl is a mermaid. Seo-hee hears this and laughs, saying, what nonsense are you talking about? Take your medicine on time. Listen, my husband is going to die soon. Finish the task of killing Junjae quickly. Dae Young agrees with Seo-hee. In the next scene, Junjae visits a doctor and says, I want to fulfill the dream that I couldn't complete. At the same time, Dae Young is also being treated by the same doctor. Then the doctor hypnotizes Junjae. During hypnosis, Junjae sees some scenes from his past life. In one scene, a man comes to arrest a king. The villagers have accused the king of oppressing people with the help of a mermaid. The king is being arrested and taken away on a boat. Meanwhile, the village head and the villagers come to capture the mermaid. The king starts suspecting that something wrong is going to happen. So, he tells one of the chief's men, "Let me go. My love is in danger. I need to save her life. I promise I will come to you myself." Hearing the king's words, one man says, "I trust him." The chief had trapped the mermaid in a net and tells the people, "I need this mermaid at any cost. Whoever brings her to me will receive a lot of money." Hearing this, all the people start shooting arrows at the mermaid, and one arrow injures her. Then King Kim arrives there. The chief says, "Look, the king is here, who oppressed people with the mermaid's help." The people start shooting arrows at the mermaid again. The king gets angry and starts fighting the people with a sword. The chief spots the mermaid in the water and is about to shoot an arrow at her, but the king sees this and reaches the mermaid before the arrow can hit her. The arrow hits the king, and he gets injured and dies. The mermaid can't bear to see her love dying, so she pierces the arrow into her own body and dies as well. Then Junjae wakes up after seeing all this, and tears are in his eyes. He says to the doctor, "She sacrificed her life for me, but I couldn't fulfill my promise and save her." The doctor says, "It would be better if you send that girl back to where she came from." But Junjae says, "No, maybe I've been given another chance. This time, I will definitely save her." At the same time, Dae-young is also there and overhears their conversation. Then Junjae goes home and finds out that Shim Cheong is not at home. He goes out to look for her. As soon as he sees Shim Cheong, he hugs her. Then they both go on a date. First, they go to a restaurant where they feed each other. Then they go to a mall and later watch a movie. The movie is very emotional, so Shim Cheong starts crying. Junjae consoles her. Then they go for coffee. There, Junjae asks Shim Cheong, "What will you do if I die?" Shim Cheong replies, "I will also die." Junjae says, "Are you crazy? Promise me that you won't do anything like that and will find a good guy and marry him." Shim Cheong asks, "Will you do the same if I die?" Junjae thinks for a while and says, "Yes, I will go to another girl." Shim Cheong says, "Junjae, what's wrong with you? Why are you saying such things? Is something really gonna happen to you?" Junjae doesn't tell her anything. Then Junjae tells Tai, "Tighten the house's security." Tai asks, "Is this all because of Dae-young?" Junjae says, "Yes." In the next scene, Yeon had completely changed his appearance and had taken his father's place to become the boss himself. Then Hyun visits his father in the hospital, who is still admitted there. Hyun's dad asks him, "Did you tell Junjae about my condition?" Hyun lies, "Yes, I told him. He was busy at the time, but he'll come to meet you soon." In the next scene, Junjae goes to meet his uncle and shows him Dae-young's picture, asking, "Is this the same man who caused your accident?" The uncle nods with his eyes, confirming it. Just then, Hyun arrives, and the two talk privately. Junjae asks about his dad's condition. Hyun lies, "He's fine and is out right now." Hyun also tells him, "Dad has transferred all the property to Mom's and my name." Hearing this, Junjae feels bad and leaves. Meanwhile, Cha-shu is worried about how to tell Junjae that their maid is actually his mother. In the next scene, Junjae's mom visits Seo-hee at her house and asks about her son. Seo-hee says, "He left home long ago," and then tells Junjae's mom, "Leave as well." Later, while walking on the road, Junjae's mom is about to have an accident, but Shim Cheong saves her. Junjae's mom says, "You've saved my life again." Shim Cheong replies, "You should take care of yourself." Then they both go shopping. Meanwhile, Junjae learns from the police that Dae-young had a wife and a son. His wife's name was Kei Seo-hee, and she left Dae-young to marry another man, but they are still in contact. In the next scene, Shim Cheong is talking to Nam-do when she suddenly feels pain in her chest and thinks, "This pain must be because I haven't gone into the water." Junjae overhears her. Then Junjae sends Nam-do and Tae out of the house so that Shim Cheong can swim. When the house is empty, Shim Cheong turns into a mermaid and swims in the water. Just then, Nam-do arrives and sees her, realizing that Shim Cheong is a mermaid. Shim Cheong gets scared, thinking her secret will now be revealed. She asks Nam-do, "Will you tell Junjae about this?" Nam-do says, "Junjae is such a coward. If he saw this, he would have run away." Then Nam-do becomes happy and thinks, "Now I've hit the jackpot. I'll make money from Shim Cheong." But Shim Cheong holds his hand and erases his memory. During dinner, Nam-do tries to say something but can't remember anything. Shim Cheong thinks, "I erased all his memory, so how is he trying to remember things?" Junjae overhears this and tells Nam-do, "Eat your food quietly." Then Junjae and Shim Cheong talk privately. Junjae asks her to promise, "If something happens to me, will you live on?" Shim Cheong replies, "If something happens to you, I'll die too." Junjae asks, "Why?" Shim Cheong thinks, "My heart beats only for you. If something happens to you, I'll die." Junjae hears this and asks, "You'll die?" Shim Cheong realizes Junjae has heard her thoughts. Shim Cheong asks him, "Since when have you been hearing my thoughts?" Junjae angrily says, "Why will you die?" Then he tells her the truth. I know you're a mermaid. Shim Chung replies, I came here for you. If something happens to you, I won't survive either. Junjae realizes that the biggest threat to Shim Chung is himself, so he decides to stay away from her. Hearing this, Shim Chung becomes very sad. Namdu arrives and asks, did you two have a fight? Junjae says, Shim Chung came here for her purpose, but now sending her back has become my purpose. If I don't send her back, something very bad will happen. Shim Chung then tells Junjae, Namdu found out my real identity and was planning to make money from me, so I erased his memory. Shim Chung asks Junjae, when you found out my truth, weren't you scared of me? Junjae replies, no, you always seemed different to me. I already understood your truth. Then Junjae takes Shim Chung to a museum and shows her a picture of King Kim. He says, this king also fell in love with a mermaid. He then tells her the whole story about how the mermaid saved the king's life in childhood and they became friends. The king got married to someone else, but on his wedding night, he went to the mermaid. The mermaid erased his memory, but they met again years later. Shim Chung asks, what happened to them after that? Junjae lies, they lived happily together and grew old together. In the next scene, Shim Chung tells Junjae, I'll erase your memory, but Junjae refuses. Then they start running after each other, which Tae and Namdu see, and they comment, these two are acting like crazy people. Later, when Junjae is about to sleep, Shim Chung comes to him. Junjae says, stay upstairs. I don't trust you. You might erase my memory. Shim Chung replies, I won't do anything like that. Just let me sleep near you. Junjae agrees, and they sleep hugging each other, which makes Shim Chung very happy. In the next scene, the police come to Junjae's house to discuss the Dae-young case. Meanwhile, Seo-hee is taking Junjae's dad home from the hospital and tells him, I've hired a new driver for you, and that driver is Dae-young. In the following scene, Cha-shi, Tai, Namdu, and Shim Cheong attend a party where everyone is dancing. Namdu gets a call from Junjae, who asks about Shim Cheong. Namdu tells him, we're at a party and Shim Cheong is with us. At the party, Cha-shi and Shim Cheong start a playful dance fight. Just then, Junjae arrives and takes Shim Cheong away. Outside, they realize it's raining. Shim Cheong says, I can't go out in the rain. So Junjae brings her an umbrella and rain shoes. Then they walk together. The next day, Shim Cheong meets the little girl. Her beggar friend also comes there. Shim Cheong invites both of them to her birthday party. Meanwhile, Hyun visits the secretary and asks, what did you tell Junjae? Then Hyun removes the oxygen supplier, causing the emergency alarm to go off. At that moment, Dae-young arrives and takes Hyun away. The doctor quickly arrives and saves Junjae's dad. Shim Cheong also invites Junjae's mom to her birthday party. The next day, there's a birthday celebration at Junjae's house. The beggar woman also arrives and immediately starts eating. At that time, Junjae has gone out to get flowers for Shim Cheong. Shim Cheong also goes to bring Junjae's mom. While returning, Junjae sees Shim Cheong with someone. Shim Cheong also notices Junjae and calls him to come to her. Junjae's mom asks Shim Cheong, who is this? Shim Cheong replies, he's my boyfriend. Then Junjae's mom looks at Junjae and recognizes him, saying, this is my son. At that moment, Junjae arrives and reunites with his mom. Both of them start crying. Then both sit in a cafe and talk. Junjae's mom says, I thought your father would take care of you and you must have gone abroad. Junjae replies, I didn't go abroad, but I lived a very good life. I met many good people. Junjae's mom asks him why you left home, and Junjae says, I left home to find you, but I couldn't find you. But now it's enough for me that I have found you. Then he hugs his mom and says, don't worry anymore. Now no one can separate you from me. We'll live together. After returning home, Shim Cheong tells everyone that Cha-shi's maid is Junjae's mom. Namdu says, we searched for her everywhere, and she was so close, but we didn't know. Then Junjae brings his mom home and she asks him, is Shim Cheong your girlfriend? Junjae shyly says, yes, which makes his mom smile. She says, Shim Cheong has helped me many times. While blowing the birthday candles, Shim Cheong makes a wish that she never gets separated from Junjae. Namdu says, you're not supposed to say your wish out loud or it won't come true. Junjae replies, that's not true. After the birthday party, everyone goes home. Next, Junjae tells the police that he has found his mom and asks them to arrest his stepmother as soon as possible. The police say, we can't do that without evidence. Junjae replies, I'll provide you with the evidence. At the hospital, the secretary's life is saved, but he goes into a coma. In the next scene, Hyun finds out that he is Dae-young's son and tells his mom, I can't be the son of a criminal. In the next scene, Shim Cheong takes Junjae's mom to her room to sleep. There, Junjae has left a surprise gift for his mom, which includes shoes and a pink octopus. Shim Cheong tells his mom, "If something happens to me, please take care of Junjae." His mom asks, "What will happen to you?" Shim Cheong remains silent. Then, Shim Cheong and Junjae talk over text messages. Shim Cheong says, "I didn't even see you properly today." Junjae replies, "Open the door, I'm downstairs." When Shim Cheong sees him, Junjae says, "You've seen me now, so close the door and go to sleep." Shim Cheong thinks to herself, "I saw on TV that you get a kiss on your birthday." Just then, Junjae calls her downstairs. Shim Cheong asks him for a kiss. Junjae says, "Don't think too much, it gives me a headache." Then Junjae hugs her and kisses her. Later, Junjae goes to his dad's office and asks Hyun about his dad. Hyun says, "I already told you that he's on vacation with his friends." Junjae says, "He has never gone anywhere for more than a week. I don't trust you." Then he leaves. Junjae then asks the police to find out about his dad and learns that his dad hasn't left the city in 2 to 3 months. Junjae tells Namdoo, "I need to break into my dad's house and find proof against Seo-hee." In the next scene, Junjae, Namdoo, and Tai arrive at Hyun's house with the police. They pretend to be pest control workers. Meanwhile, Shim Cheong goes to a restaurant to meet Hyun and keep him occupied. At the same restaurant, Dae-young is also eating. Tai disables all the cameras in the house. Junjae takes some pictures of the place and collects some medicine. He places a voice recorder under the table. Then he goes to his dad's room, meets him, and asks him to come with him. Junjae tells his dad, "Your life is in danger," and reveals the entire truth about Seo-hee. However, his dad says, "Leave," and Junjae then leaves from there. The housemaid calls Hyun and tells him everything. Hyun says to Shim Cheong, "So, this is why you called me here," and then leaves her there. As soon as he leaves, Dae-young arrives and is about to harm Shim Cheong. She runs to the terrace, and when Dae-young follows her, she grabs him and says, "Forget everything," erasing his memory. Shim Cheong then remembers her past, where a king sacrificed his life to save a mermaid, and the mermaid later also took her own life. She realizes that Junjae had lied to her and begins to cry. When Shim Cheong returns home, she thinks to herself that Junjae taught her how to live, and he is her entire world. But now, she thinks, "I can't stay here anymore because my presence puts Junjae in danger." Meanwhile, Seo-hee calls Dae-young, but he says, "Who are you?" because all his memories are erased. Elsewhere, Junjae and his friends are with the police. They discover that the medicines and flowers are highly dangerous and can be used to kill someone. In the next scene, Shim Cheong is in her room playing very loud music. Junjae goes to her and says, "Go away from here, I need to think." She then says, "You listen to everything I say." Junjae replies, "All right, I'll leave," but then hugs her before going. Junjae goes to the hall where Namdoo is also present. Junjae tells him, "Shim Cheong kicked me out of the room because she needed to think." Namdoo replies, "When girls take time to think, they are deciding whether they want to stay with you or not, or maybe you've lied to them." Meanwhile, Seo-hee tries to remind Dae-young of his past and says, "We will take revenge on everyone." However, Dae-young cannot recall anything. The next morning, Junjae goes to wake Shim Cheong while wearing headphones and says, "I can't hear anything. Come have breakfast." Tai sees him and says, "Those are my headphones." Junjae responds, "I need them for a few days." Then he starts talking loudly. Namdoo and Tai watch him in confusion. Just then, Shim Cheong arrives looking very sad. Meanwhile, Seo-hee is checking the medicines she used to give to Junjae's dad. She notices some are missing and asks the maid, "Did anyone come to our house?" The maid replies, "The pest control people came." Junjae and the police are listening to this conversation through the microphone Junjae had planted. Seo-hee gives medicine to Junjae's dad, but he recalls Junjae's words about how Seo-hee had been married twice before and how her previous husbands died due to eye-related conditions. He tells Seo-hee, "Leave the medicine. I'll take it later," and wraps it in a tissue to throw it away. While he does this, Seo-hee watches him silently. In the next scene, Shim Cheong has invited the little girl and the beggar to the house. She wants to meet them once before leaving. Elsewhere, Cha-shir calls Junjae and tells him, "I know you like someone else, but I like you." She then confesses her feelings and says, "Shim Cheong isn't serious about you, and I'll wait for you until she leaves." Junjae replies, "That will never happen. Shim Cheong will always stay with me. Even if she leaves, I'll follow her." Then he leaves from there. Next, Junjae meets Hyun. Hyun asks him, "Why did you go into my house like a thief?" Then they get into a fight. Hyun says, "Did you go to meet Dad or was there another purpose? Dad doesn't even want to see your face." Junjae replies, "Dad is in this condition because of your mom. If anything happens to him, I will kill both you and your mom." Then he goes back home. At home, he sees that Shim Cheong has again turned on loud music. Junjae goes to her room and asks, "What happened?" She tells him the truth. "You lied to me. We didn't have a happy ending. You died because of me." Junjae asks, "How do you know this?" She explains, "When you went to meet your dad, I was with Hyun. After he left, Dae-young came there. When I erased his memory, I remembered my past." Then she asks him, "Will it happen like that again?" Junjae replies, "No, I won't let anything like that happen." Elsewhere, Seo-hee brings medicine again, but Junjae's dad throws it away and drinks water instead. However, Seo-hee had mixed poison in the water. Because of this, Junjae's dad starts feeling unwell. Seo-hee stands outside watching all this and then leaves. When Junjae goes to his room, he finds a voice note from his dad on his phone. In it, his dad says, "I was wrong. All the decisions I made were wrong, but now it's too late. I love you very much. Please forgive me." Hearing this, Junjae is shocked and quickly leaves to go to his dad. When he arrives, he sees an ambulance parked outside and a dead body being taken away. When he sees the face of the body, it's his dad. Seeing this, Junjae says, "No," and begins crying loudly. And when Junjae's dad was recording the voice note, Hayeon had arrived there. While recording his words, Junjae's dad says, "I love Junjae the most in the world." Hearing this, Hayeon becomes emotional, but then his dad's voice stops. When Hayeon goes to him, he says, "Dad," and sees that his dad has stopped breathing and passed away. Out of fear, Hayeon tries to leave, but then he notices a glass on the table. When he checks the glass, he says, "Poison," and realizes that his mom did all this. Hayeon quickly washes the glass to remove any evidence. Then he calls the police. The police arrive with a forensic team and ask Hayeon, was he given any medicine? Hayeon lies and says, "I don't know." The police take the body for a post-mortem. Hyun starts crying loudly to appear innocent. When Hyun comes outside, he sees Junjae sitting there crying. As soon as Junjae sees Hyun, he attacks him and says, "You and your mom killed my dad. I will never forgive you." Junjae starts beating Hyun, but the police intervene and save Hyun. Elsewhere, Shim Cheong is very worried about Junjae. Then Tai arrives and tells her about Junjae's dad. The three of them go to the hospital, where they find Junjae crying. Shim Cheong hugs him. Junjae says, "This all happened because of me. If I had seen my phone earlier, I could have saved him." Later, Junjae meets his mom. She says, "A month ago, I met your dad, but he didn't recognize me." Junjae explains to her, his eyesight had become very weak, which is why he didn't recognize you. On the other side, Seo-hee is talking to her lawyer. She says, "I am sending my husband's medical reports. Quickly prepare his death certificate and the land transfer documents." Just then, Hyun comes in and asks, "Did you do all this? Tell me the truth so I can help you." Seo-hee replies, "Yes, I did all this." In the next scene, Nam-do and Hyun are together. Hayeon tells Nam-do, "You also do fraud with Junjae. You don't spare anyone. I can send anyone to jail." Hearing the word jail, Nam-do gets scared and says, "I am loyal to whoever has money in their pocket." Hyun says, "I want to get rid of Junjae." Nam-do replies, "Junjae used to work with me, but now because of Shim Cheong, he has left me. I will do your work." In the next scene, the doctor informs them that the patient died of a heart attack, but Junjae does not believe it and demands a post-mortem. However, Seo-hee starts her act again and says, "I don't want anything to be done to his dead body. If you need money, take it all." And she starts crying. Hyun says, "I am the elder son of this house, and Junjae left home 10 years ago. I also don't want a post-mortem to happen." In the next scene, the police search Seo-hee's house. However, they don't find anything there. Then Seo-hee arranges a funeral where Junjae's mom also comes. Seeing Junjae's mom, Seo-hee says, "What have you come here for?" Junjae's mom replies, "I had to come here. After all, he was my husband." Then she places flowers on the photo and says, "Many things were left unsaid. There are many reasons not to forgive you, but the grief of your death is far greater. For what you did to me, I forgive you." Seo-hee meets Junjae's mom alone and says, "You and your son haven't shown your faces for the past 10 years, and now you've come for the money. If you had kept your mouth shut, maybe I would have given you something, but now you won't get anything." At this, Junjae's mom angrily slaps Seo-hee and says, "You are a thief, and a thief can never become the owner." Kang Seo-hee tries to slap Junjae's mom back, but Shim Cheong arrives and grabs her hand. When Shim Cheong grabs Seo-hee's hand, she sees Seo-hee's entire past. She sees how Seo-hee switched Junjae's dad's medicine, mixed poison in the water, and stored poisonous substances in the basement. She also sees Dae-young's face. Shim Cheong tells Seo-hee, "All the sins you've committed will haunt you until your last breath." Junjae is very distressed because he doesn't have any evidence. Just then, Nam-do comes and advises him, "Don't proceed with the post-mortem. Then Shim Cheong arrives and tells Junjae, "I saw everything when I held her hand." In the next scene, Shim Cheong takes Junjae and the police to the basement. The police arrest Seo-hee and take her away. Junjae feels a bit relieved. In the next scene, Seo-hee's lawyer comes to her and says, "They arrested you without a warrant, so you just need to stay silent for 48 hours. Whatever they ask, don't say anything. After 48 hours, they will have to release you." The police question Seo-hee, but she does not answer any of their questions. The police inform Junjae that Seo-hee is not confessing to her crime because she fears losing all her property. When Junjae leaves the police station, Namdoo keeps an eye on him and informs Hyun, "Junjae just came out, and your mom will be released by 6 p.m. Seo-hee is released a little later, and Hyun takes her away. Then, as Junjae is about to leave in his car, Namdoo hits him on the head from behind with a stick, rendering him unconscious, and takes him to an isolated place. Tai is checking the CCTV cameras and sees everything, so he informs Shim Cheong. Both of them start following Namdoo. Namdoo takes Junjae to a place where Seo-hee and Hyun are already present. Namdoo ties Junjae's hands and feet. Junjae says to him, "I considered you my friend, and this is what you did?" Namdoo replies, "This is your fault. You went after a girl and stopped working with me. I am doing all this for money." Namdoo shows Junjae a suicide note and says, "We will place this in your room, which will prove that you killed your dad." Then he injects Junjae with the same poison that was given to his dad. Hyun says, "This suicide note states that your dad didn't leave you anything in the property, so you killed him. And since you know every corner of the house, you planted evidence in the basement." Seo-hee says, "I want to speak to Junjae alone." When the two talk alone, Junjae asks Seo-hee, "How could you do this to your husband? He loved you more than me." Seo-hee says, "I spent 17 years with him, but he thought about giving all his property to you. That's why I killed him. Anyway, I used to give him small doses of poison in his food every day." Junjae asks her, "You killed your ex-husbands the same way, didn't you?" Seo-hee says, "Yes." Junjae starts laughing loudly, and the hidden police officers come out. They had recorded everything Seo-hee confessed. In reality, this entire plan was Namdoo's. He had already informed Junjae about Hyun's offer. Then Namdoo and Junjae, together with the police, devised this whole plan to expose Hyun and Seo-hee's truth. The police start arresting Hyun and Seo-hee. Hyun sees Namdoo with Junjae and realizes that Namdoo has betrayed him. In anger, Hyun takes a gun from the police and tries to shoot Junjae, but Shim Cheong arrives just in time and takes the bullet herself. Shim Cheong tells Junjae, "I knew you would save me, but this time fate has changed, so I saved you." Junjae, crying while taking Shim Cheong to the hospital, says, "Don't go, I need you." This entire incident makes it to the news. Later, when Hyun is being taken to the police station, he pretends to need the restroom and consumes poison. He feels that everything is over and that there is nothing left in his life. At the police station, during questioning, Hyun loses consciousness due to the poison. Meanwhile, Seo-hee is being interrogated separately. When she learns that her son has consumed poison, she runs to him. Hyun says to his mother, "Now nothing can be done. I couldn't handle my defeat. Being your son was my misfortune." Saying this, Hyun dies, and Seo-hee collapses to the ground, crying loudly. Meanwhile, Shim Cheong is undergoing surgery, and everyone is very worried. Then Namdoo informs Junjae that Hyun has ended his life. Junjae is shocked to hear this. Shim Cheong's surgery is successful, but she has not regained consciousness yet. After that, Junjae and Namdoo go to meet Secretary Uncle, where they learn that she has regained consciousness and is fine now. Then Junjae and Namdoo return to the hospital, where they wait for Shim Cheong to wake up. Namdoo says to Junjae, "I don't think Shim Cheong is human. I overheard your conversations. She's a mermaid, isn't she?" Hearing this, Junjae becomes tense. Namdoo then says, "Money is very important to me, but I have two principles. First, never forgive an enemy, and second, repay the debt of anyone who has done a favor. Shim Cheong hasn't done me any favors, but she has done one for you. She took a bullet for you and saved my friend's life." At that moment, Shim Cheong's voice is heard, and it is revealed that she has regained consciousness. Junjae goes to her and says, "If something had happened to you, I wouldn't have been able to live either." Shim Cheong smiles and says, "No, you would have gone to another girl." Junjae holds her hand and says, "Not at all. I only love you." Meanwhile, Seo-hee is being taken into police custody, and this news is being shown on TV. Dae-young is also watching the news but doesn't remember anything. Then he sees the doctor's number on his phone and calls him to meet. The doctor immediately calls Junjae to inform him. Dae-young is coming to see me. Junjae informs the police as well. When Dae-young arrives at the doctor's place, the police come and arrest him. In the next scene, Cha-shu comes to meet Shim-chong in the hospital, but she is sleeping. Cha-shu places flowers there and is about to leave when Shim-chong wakes up. She says, "I didn't expect you to come." Cha-shu says, "I just came to see you, but I still hate you." Shim-chong says, "But I don't hate you." Cha-shu says, "You took Junjae away from me." Shim-chong replies, "Don't worry, you'll find your love very soon." At that moment, Tai arrives and offers to drop Cha-shu home. On the way, Cha-shu starts crying. Tai goes to her, hugs her, and then they kiss each other, starting their relationship. Next, Junjae takes Shim-chong home. Once there, Junjae says, "Why don't we sleep in the same room now?" Shim-chong refuses because she doesn't want Junjae to find out that she still feels pain in her chest from the bullet wound. The next day, Jinju and her husband come to meet Junjae's mom. There, they see Namdoo, Junjae, and Shim-chong. Before they can say anything, Shim-chong pulls them aside and erases their memories. They meet and leave without any issues. Namdoo says, "I think I've really started to like you. You're a superwoman." He's about to hug Shim-chong, but Junjae stops him. At that moment, Shim-chong suddenly feels pain, and Junjae becomes worried about her. Namdoo says, "Could it be because you got discharged from the hospital too soon?" Junjae realizes that Shim-chong's health is not okay, and the next morning he is preparing breakfast for her. Shim-chong asks, "Where is everyone else?" Junjae says, "I sent everyone out so we could spend some time alone." Then he asks her to get ready. They eat together, and then Junjae asks her, "After the operation, you haven't been feeling well. Are you going to die? Is there any way? Tell me what I can do for you." Then Junjae gives her a green bracelet and says, "If you go back to the sea, your life will be saved. Just promise me that you won't erase my memory. I want to live with the memories of you." Shim-chong says, "Will you be able to bear this pain? I might never come back." Junjae replies, "If you don't come back, we'll be reborn, and I'll fall in love with you again. If we remember each other, the hope of reuniting will remain alive." Then Junjae asks Shim-cheong to decide whether she wants to erase his memory or not. Shim-cheong says, "I have made my decision." Then they kiss, and at the same time, Shim-cheong erases Junjae's memory. Shim-cheong is leaving the house. On the way, Namdoo, Junjae's mom, and Tai see her. Shim-cheong meets them and erases each of their memories one by one. Then she goes to meet Jinju and Cha-shi's families, bids them goodbye, and erases their memories too. Lastly, she goes to her beggar friend and the little girl, informs them about her departure, shakes hands with them, and erases their memories as well. After that, she returns to the sea. Next, we are shown a scene 3 years later, where Junjae and his friends are eating together. Junjae teases them, saying, "How long are you guys going to stay here?" His mom scolds him and says, "They will stay here until they get married." Then we see that everyone has moved on in life. Junjae completed his law studies and became a trainee at a company. Namdoo became a good lecturer and is seen giving a lecture on taxes. Tai became an excellent hacker, checking website security and making them stronger. Then a police officer comes to meet them, and they all have a party together. During the party, Junjae drinks excessively. When the officer is about to leave, Junjae holds him, cries, and doesn't let him go. The officer asks Namdoo, "What's wrong with him?" Namdoo replies, "He always does this when someone comes over." He cries and doesn't let them leave. Junjae says, "I miss her so much." Namdoo adds, "He always does this after drinking." During this time, we see Shim-cheong in the sea, crying as she remembers Junjae. In the next scene, Junjae takes out some diaries he had hidden in his locker, reads them, and then goes to the seaside. Even when he passes by the sea after work, it feels like he is remembering something, though Shim-chong had erased his memory. In the next scene, Shim-chong returns and is very happy. She ate many herbs in the sea, which cured her completely. She goes to Junjae's house, but no one recognizes her. After a while, Junjae arrives, but he doesn't recognize her either because Shim-cheong had erased everyone's memories before leaving. Junjae asks her to leave, which makes Shim-cheong feel very hurt, and she leaves. She sits outside thinking, "Did I make a mistake by coming back?" At that moment, Junjae arrives. Shim-cheong is surprised to see him. Junjae tells her, "I knew you would erase my memory before leaving, so I wrote everything down in a diary and kept it with me. I would read it every day, which is why I remember everything." Then they hug each other. Finally, we see a scene where Shim-chong and Junjae have gotten married and are very happy together. With this, the drama comes to an end. How much rating would you give this drama, and which was your favorite scene? Let us know in the comments. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share the videos.